It doesn't have to be this way. That's from the Blow Monkeys on Revenge of the 80s Radio. I'm Chris Cordani. The band reformed in 2008 and have released several acclaimed albums, most recently 2017's The Wild River and 2019's Acoustic. With me now is the leader of the band and its frontman, Dr. Robert. Welcome to Revenge of the 80s Radio, Doctor.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm always happy. I think I'm doing okay. How about you?
Yeah, likewise. I can't complain. Still ticking over, as they say.
Excellent. I can complain, but I generally don't anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of bands from the 80s who have broken up and reformed in some way have done either one of these things. Reunite for a tour and possibly an album or two, or perhaps reunite with some original members, but with a somewhat different lineup for one reason or another. The Blow Monkeys' original lineup, the full original lineup, reformed and mostly still making music today. What keeps you guys together?
Well, I think we have a sort of a family kind of ethic in the band. It's always kind of been that way. And we enjoy each other's company, although we don't really mix outside of the band, which is probably why we're still together. But ultimately the glue is the music, you know. So we enjoy playing gigs, we enjoy making new records, and we just carry on until we don't feel we have anything more to say. But the whole point of getting back together was to make some new music as well as celebrate what we'd already done.
And the good thing is, a lot of you guys still, while the band is on, do your own solo projects, which makes it a lot more special when you get together, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I write a lot, so I have plenty of time to sort of pursue my own solo career as well, which is rather different to what we do with the Blow Monkeys. So, I'm not short of songs. I enjoy writing. I enjoy doing what I do. So, as long as there's people out there that want to hear it, I'll keep doing it.
A couple of my listeners found I was doing an interview with you and said, can you ask Dr. Robert how and why he got his stage name? I'm assuming you're a Beatles guy or maybe a neurosurgeon in a past life, but what made you pick Dr. Robert?
Well, you know what? Neither of those things, because when I first started the band, I was 18 years old, and I just thought I needed to have some kind of name. It just was like what occurred to me, most people have. So, and then at that point, I wasn't aware of this Beatles song, to be honest, until I'd listened later on to Revolver. So it was just a name that seemed, my name is Robert, and I thought that would do. But there's no sort of special reason behind it. And the same with the Blow Monkeys. I mean, it's kind of a stupid name, but people don't forget it.
No, nobody forgets that. Interestingly, you grew up in Australia, Dr. Robert, but formed the band after moving back to Britain. That country was immersed in its own new wave scene and spawning many genres at the time. Australia had its own brand of new wave as well. How much influence did music you listened to from Australia have on the creation of the Blow Monkeys?
Well, it did have, actually, because at the time, what I found that in Australia, they were listening to very different sorts of music than the stuff I'd grown up with in England. So I was, I saw bands like The Saints and early version of The Birthday Party with Nick Cave and people like that, and Radio Birdman and sort of the early punk scene in Australia. And there was one band in particular that your listeners probably won't know of, but they were called the Laughing Clowns. And that was the kind of blueprint for the Blow Monkeys. They had a brass section, they had a jazzy drummer, and, it was just something that really struck home with me.
I always say brass is important, and real brass, not the synthesizer brass.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a massive fan. I love I love that kind of soul stuff, James Brown, but I also love that African Fela Kuti type brass as well.
Dr. Robert, your lyrics were politically charged for the most part, yet set with a rather smooth musical style that allowed the words to subtly enter the listener's ears while either dancing or enjoying the sound. Much of the more political music at the time came from a much harder or more blatant tone, and you knew it was political, like what we heard from The Clash maybe, or perhaps Midnight Oil. But was this idea to kind of smooth it in by design originally, or something that just developed freely as you played together?
It just happened. I mean, I was living in Brixton in London during most of the 80s. It was a very political time in the UK. Well, it still is. It always is. And I just wanted to write about what was around me. But at the time, I was very influenced by soul music and what we were making. So I was just trying to put the two together in a way that was natural. I wasn't happy writing kind of just ordinary love songs, although I would be now. It was just a natural thing, really, and I was just observing what was going on around me.
Well, you might have helped a lot of people with digging your scene. I'm sure it helped a lot of high school kids maybe learn a lot more about AIDS and the political backlash against gay people at the time.
Yeah, I don't know whether that message got through, but it was important for me to write something about that because at the time there was a lot of hysteria and fear being thrown about and false claims, fake news as they say these days. So it was important to say something.
Right. Well, people were scared at the time, and maybe a nicer tone kind of gave people a little more of a perspective. Like, there's something to be said about the idea of making what might be considered controversial statements through an overall pleasurable tone, and even hit the dance charts. I mean, that's a lot.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think it's more effective. I think in a sense I remember John Lennon saying that he'd written all these political songs, but when he quoted it in a slightly sugary way with something like Imagine, it got through. Because, first of all, you have to have a good song. I think you have to draw people in. You have to cast a spell. And then if people want to listen to the lyrics and study them, great. But, I don't think that you can't hound people or shout at them and necessarily get them to change their mind or even think about things.
Right. In fact, you have a lot of people who listen to your music on the other side politically they'll get where you're coming from. And
yeah,
they'll enjoy
it doesn't matter what side. It doesn't matter what side politically you're from. I mean, the most important thing is that you like the song and that you feel that the lyrics are heartfelt. It really doesn't matter where you're from.
Exactly. Dr. Robert, you and your bandmates collaborated with an interesting array of artists at the time, and even into today. Paul Weller, Curtis Mayfield, and even the Jamaican guy, Ika Mouse, which I love the name. I just had to say Ika Mouse. I try to do that every once in a while.
Yeah, it's good therapy.
You continue that in the solo efforts, too. It seems important to you to make sure you get a lot of genres mixed in with your own tones.
I just love that collaborative thing about musicians. I've always thought that when you put it together, you've got nothing to lose. You've only got something to gain. Inspiration and sharing and trying to make something new and fresh. So, I think I'm drawn towards that, and I like that aspect of it, and not so much competition and ego battles and all that. Just making music together. So I've done quite a lot of that over the years. Obviously, there were people that I really learned from, like Curtis Mayfield, who was, in my book, he was a genius, and he was such a lovely guy. So I was just a kid when I met him, really. So the people like that come along and they change your life.
Considering the fact that you guys play so well together, what made the Blow Monkeys disband at the turn of the 90s?
A lot of things, really. And we had been together for 10 years and we'd done an awful lot of touring. I think we were a bit tired. We'd come to the end of our record contract. I didn't really want to renegotiate a new one. And I moved out of London with my wife and a young family, and everyone had young kids. So, it was time to do something different. I wanted to get into production, play with other people, make some solo records. So it was the right time.
Dr. Robert of the Blow Monkeys is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Straight ahead, let's talk about his solo work, the Blow Monkeys reforming, and the new music. Circular Key from Dr. Robert on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Solo Dr. Robert. He's here with me right now. Dr. Robert, even through your solo career and evolution as a musician, you still balanced entertaining jazz solo music with the political thoughts. Now, we talked about that, but the solo end with a more guitar-oriented sound, even with some classic folk like Circular Key. Or the heavier yet but still jazzy Pond Life, ranging to the twangy, and I like the twangy, hippie gumbo.
Yeah.
Talk about the music you wanted to do at the time when you were with the Blow Monkeys but couldn't do it as part of the band.
Well, after the Blow Monkeys split up, I sort of went on a bit of a musical archaeological dig, if you like. I sort of really went into singer-songwriter territory. I was fascinated with the Greenwich Village folk scene, and then back through things like the Harry Smith folk anthology, all the way back to Alan Lomax's field recordings, and to sort of, acquaint myself with the roots of it all, because I was doing gigs as a solo artist just with an acoustic guitar, which is kind of funny because that's where I started off when I was a kid, busking away, and that's what Circular Key was about, because I used to busk there when I lived in Australia. So all those things kind of didn't really fit in with the band, so much, and it was just something that I wanted to explore, and I still do. Luckily, I have both kind of avenues open to me.
As I said, I like the twangy hippie gumbo, too. A little country western from Dr. Robert.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I love country and western. I mean, for me, Hank Williams was one of the great, if not the greatest songwriter of all time.
He should be on that list. Him and Johnny Cash, they should be on everybody's list. At least that's what I say. It's a PSA from us.
Yeah, not just, and George Jones, and, yeah, all those people.
You said you went on a sort of a musical archaeological dig that just perked one tune in my head, the jaunting drinking ditty, Ode to Bacchus. It's like an old-fashioned drinking tune. I mean, you can go back centuries for something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those morality tales, really. A lot of people in my business get into all sorts of problems with substances or alcohol or whatever it may be. I've been very lucky that way. I'm just not that kind of person. But that's kind of what that song was about. And again, a bit of a bit of a sidestep, a song that wouldn't have suited the Blow Monkeys. But I'm glad you picked up on that one because I still do that at solo gigs.
They can be a lot of fun, and again, it just harkens back to real music history. A lot of these old folk tunes, that sort of thing too, or the pub tunes, if you will, the tavern tracks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was born in Scotland, and my family my mother in particular was, they sang a lot of Scottish folk songs and a lot of, traditional kind of songs that were around. And a lot of my family in the past would have moved down to places like South Carolina when they, so there's a lot of Scottish tradition in that kind of music. So it's in me somewhere deep inside. I just had to find it.
Dr. Robert of the Blow Monkeys is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. I have to add this. I greatly admire the plaid suit you wore for a good portion of the I've Learned to Live with Love video. I mean, we're suit people here. I'm a suit guy. That was some suit.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I had a very lovely suit maker who, when I used to live in London, and that was a good one. I was inspired by a jazz musician called George Melly, who used to wear these big check suits.
I have to get one like that. I actually have a green leisure suit, a forest green colored leisure suit from the 70s. I like that one. I wear that once in a while. Of course, I like the shiny suits I have, too.
Nice.
As we mentioned before, Dr. Robert, the Blow Monkeys reformed in 2008. Devil's Tavern was your first post-reunion album. Now that, to me, and again, from the listeners' ears, it seemed to be an amalgamation of your lineup's evolution and growth as musicians. But what were some of the new things that you all brought to the band's new formation? Well, new reformation, I should say, because you're still the original lineup, through the years when you worked separately?
Well, I guess you'd have to ask individual members, but, the sound that we make is just the four of us, and that's the kind of core element of what makes the Blow Monkeys sound like us. And, you fast forwarding 18 years and everybody's experienced having families growing up, whatever they've been through, all goes into the melting pot. And I think, saxophone player Neville had not actually picked the saxophone up for 18 years. So he was coming right back to it from the beginning. But, you don't forget. The drummer and the bass player, Mick and Tony, they'd been playing lots, but different styles. And, of course, I've been doing a lot of solo gigs and playing, producing and working with people like Paul Weller and all that. So we all had different experiences to bring back to it. But when we sit in the same room, it's us.
The second album, Staring at the Sea, has a title track that was... Now, we talked about you writing a lot of politically charged lyrics, but this one was rather special to you in another way.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't written many autobiographical things. That one was pretty much about my father. These things are sometimes quite difficult to talk about, and in a funny way, they're easier to sing about because you can kind of evoke an emotion with a simple melody and simple words, as long as they mean something to you, and then hopefully you pass that out to other people. So that's what that song was about.
Most recently, the Blow Monkeys' 2017 album, The Wild River, with Crispin Taylor on drums, by the way, is out. Through today, as evidenced in The Wild River, the Blow Monkeys' soulful, jazzy tones are vehicles for your thoughts on issues important to you, and that's a true constant with you in the band. But Crying for the Moon is interesting musically. We'll get to that, because I know there's a lot of political stuff, but Crying for the Moon is rather interesting musically, because it was recorded live, yet you added some strings later on. How did you put that together?
Well, we just sat together in the studio, and I literally showed them the song that morning. It's not that difficult, chord-wise, and I've got to the stage where I much prefer to sing live when I'm recording, because there's a connection between playing the guitar and the way I sing that doesn't happen when I do the two things separately. So because I've done so many gigs over the years now and stuff, I'm in good shape to do that. So, I've learned about the recording process over the years, and I've learned that with me, anyway, and the band, it's best to get it very early. That there's something about getting first or second takes in the studio before any form of sort of self-consciousness kicks in. So I'm prepared to go with it even if there are mistakes, because it's something about the spirit.
The Wild River was put out in 2017, as we mentioned before. I understand you're working on a new album. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. You also have a new album called Acoustic that was just out this year with the aforementioned acoustic versions of classic Blow Monkeys tracks. We know about the horn and everything you kind of did in the jazzy tone, but they really took quite well to the acoustic guitar and unplugged sound. Perhaps MTV may have dropped the ball in not putting you on Unplugged back in the 80s.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think that perhaps people, were if you didn't really know about us other than what you'd seen on Digging Your Scene video, you'd think that there was some guy wearing a lot of makeup with a frothy fringe, wears a lot of suits, probably can't play. That may have been the perception. So it was important for me to strip those songs down and just present them in a way that I felt, that I'd been playing them in folk clubs as well, just because, that's how you really work out whether a song's got legs or not. So hopefully people enjoyed hearing that.
Well, you bring up a very interesting point. The 80s, and I get it because MTV was a big part of making bands and artists big blockbuster hits after a while, even if they didn't really sell out. The video was a very important part, and the packaging of you guys and other artists were paramount to success and getting the message out there. Unfortunately, that did come with the territory. People might have thought, well, these guys are all style and no substance. But you guys and a lot of other artists were very underrated musicians at the time. It's good to hear you today, whereas you don't have a lot of record company suits to go through and overproduce everything, where you can give your longtime fans sort of a more raw sound.
Yeah, no, it's good. A lot of good songs were ruined by the production in the 80s. I'm not complaining. We had a great time, and of course it gave me a career. But I started playing because the music that I loved, was playing guitar, something like Mark Bolan or T-Rex or early David Bowie or Curtis Mayfield. They were great musicians as well, and so behind all that gloss and video and makeup, we could play.
So with this album, the acoustic album, and of course your solo work that you've been putting together, and believe me, while the new reformation, and we talked about this, while the new reformation of the Blow Monkeys is still in business and putting out music, you put out a lot of music as well on your own. You produce for other people too. What do you want your fans from the 80s and new listeners today to know most about you as a musician overall?
I'm not. Do you know what? I'm not concerned about that particularly. I just feel still if people like the music. I mean, it's all about the music. It's not about me. I'm just channeling whatever's coming through, and that's why I enjoy collaborations. I enjoy producing. I've been producing albums for a label called Monk's Road, which is a big collaborative album with 10 different artists on it, doing my songs, but other people's songs too. And you just, at this point in my life and my career, if that's the right word, it's just about putting stuff out. It's just about continually creating, and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. But as long as I feel that I'm doing it from a place which is the right reason and I'm enjoying the process, that's good enough for me. I'm not looking for, top 5 or to get on this or to get on that. If anybody picks up on it and enjoys it, brilliant. That's good enough for me. I still think it's a wonderful life being a musician, and I've been very lucky to be able to do what I do. So I'm just thrilled to be able to carry on.
I understand the Blow Monkeys have a new album in the pipeline for next year, 2020. What's happening with that?
Well, I'm writing it right now, and I'm trying to do something different with it. There's no point in repeating yourself. I was really happy with The Wild River. I thought it was the best thing we've done since we got back together, if not ever. And so, it's raised the bar for me, and it's a challenge to try and come up with something fresh So, but no, we need to get out and make some new music and carry on playing. I really enjoy playing live with the band. That is really the best part of it all, because you can see the white of people's eyes. You can get an instant reaction. And so, in order to do that, I have to keep writing new songs, just like always, to keep things fresh.
You're going to tackle some of the hot issues of the day as well?
Well, there's so many hot issues that it's beyond parody, it's beyond criticism. But I'm sure I'll find some way of getting there.
It's a cornucopia of of issues to write about today.
There were so many issues. I might just have to make a love song album, just in protest.
Ooh.
There's too much to protest about right now.
That's going to really throw people off. And as far as touring, are you guys still hitting the road, or maybe as a solo artist as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we play with the band. We're heading out again in November, and we're going out next year into festivals and stuff. And that's like I said, that's the part we really do enjoy.
Dr. Robert, I want to thank you for coming on Revenge of the 80s Radio with us. I'm going to play tracks from acoustic in the coming weeks, but I really want to get back to the 2017 Wild River album. So let's play Crying for the Moon from the Blow Monkeys on Revenge of the 80s Radio.